We're going to start out with Guy James from the Guy James Show.
Well, Governor, in this particular year being an election year and with your campaign and so forth, I know I'm from South Florida. I know well the immigration issue. How do you plan on dealing with health care in Virginia? We're hearing people all over the place on this issue. Some I'm not going to take care of illegals. Yes, we will. We will their children. We want their children. Where do you stand on that?
Well, in Virginia, there's already been a ruling that basically says that folks on Medicaid have to prove their legal status before they get coverage. I think around the issue of immigration, from the overall standpoint, we need to lower the rhetoric. Clearly, this is an issue of concern. I know communities in my state that have gone from 5% to 50% ESL students over a 4 or 5 year period. That's a challenge to grapple with. We are going to need to make sure that part of our solution grapples with more border security. It does realize that folks who are here undocumented shouldn't go to the front of the line. Somebody who's been waiting to come into the country legally should still have precedence. We're going to need to make sure that we put some sanctions on employers who hire folks knowingly, illegally. And part of our verification system right now, I think, there's enormous opportunities to rework that. But we also can't, in this debate, throw out the very important contribution that immigrants make to this country. I know in my state, 20% of the businesses, particularly the high-tech businesses in Northern Virginia, are first-generation Americans. And how do we value that contribution? And part of the hypocrisy of this debate, particularly coming out of the administration, is they talk tough on this issue, yet they've turned a blind eye for the last 7 or 8 years. And the percentage of employer prosecutions for violating immigration law I've seen numbers that have dropped as high as 70%. And how do you not end up, when someone is here, documented or undocumented though, I've even seen certain people say we're not going to be willing to give emergency services to those folks. And that's a community-based healthcare hazard. Somebody has got a communicable disease, regardless of the legal status, you need to make sure they get treatment. So my hope is that we can lower the rhetoric and some of the shrillness that particularly coming out of the other side, and let's see if we can sort through the answer.
Warren Ballantyne, syndicated on Radio 1 and Syndication 1. You're next.
Governor, when I look at Virginia, I see two parts of Virginia. I see Northern Virginia, where there's more city life, but I also see areas like Southampton County. And when I see this, and I see the farmers down there, and I know a bunch of farmers down here. A lot of my listeners are farmers. What do you plan on doing to help these farmers? Because right now they need some help.
Well, the only way I got elected governor of Virginia was by reaching out in a lot of communities that a Democrat hadn't done well in 25 years, in rural Virginia, in Southside Virginia, in Southwest Virginia. Matter of fact, I didn't do as well as other Democratic candidates have done in Northern Virginia. And I think the challenge, whether you're a farmer, whether you're a small business person, whether you've been somebody who used to be in the textile industry or furniture business, where large hits in Virginia, the economy's changing. How do you give that kid in that community at least the choice to stay in the community? Now, let me give you some specific suggestions. One, in terms of agriculture, we are going to have to continue to find ways to, and I think with some of the concerns of foreign products coming in around safety, I think there's going to be a renewed sense of local-based products. I think you're going to see a return to people purchasing local-based products based upon safety concerns, based upon concerns, environmental concerns, for example, with transport costs. So I think there can be a chance to reinvigorate some of our small farms. Part of that's going to require technology. But if you're going to have that technology component, you're also going to have broadband. America's fallen to 15th in the world in broadband deployment. You talk about a way that you're going to write off huge swaths of our country in terms of having the economic opportunity. Now, I'm proud as governor, we had the biggest rural broadband deployment in the whole country going on in Southside Virginia, where we brought some of our tobacco funds, some state funds, some federal funds, and we're providing that kind of opportunity. We've started to see a resurgence in those communities. I think coupled with that, you've got to, on your economic development efforts, again, something we did in our state, was we put a lot more incentive in bringing jobs into those rural communities. in terms of the level of state incentives. And by the end of our term, I think it was close to 75% of our, except for a few mega projects, were job being driven to Southside and Southwest Virginia. You've got to make sure you bring the educational reforms, and a lot of the area that we focused on was educational reform to rural communities. We focused appropriately on some of our urban cities, but we also have to realize many of the same problems in terms of quality of teachers and quality of education that exist in the inner city also exist in the small towns. And again, talking politics is cheap. One of the things I was proudest of was, based on our education reforms, Virginia was named the best place in the country for a child to be born in America today in terms of their educational opportunity.
John Elliott from Air America.
Governor, how are you? You have an extraordinarily strong record in Virginia, and I'm thinking you don't even have to change the signs because it's just it's going to be Warner and Warner to Warner. It's a privilege to sit with a future senator. So what is the main reason that motivated you to run for the United States Senate? And a two-part question, if you don't mind. What do you feel is your strength that you are bringing to that 100-person body?
You know, I spent 11 months looking at exploring the possibility of running for national office and decided not to go forward at this point. I got 3 teenage daughters and a wife. The vote was 4-1 against me in my own household. And, you know, a little bit of
Probably the last election you've lost.
Well, and also, if I wasn't 1,000% sure, I didn't think I should step forward. But I came away from that journey with a real sense that there are such enormous problems that our country faces. We're at one of those, I believe, historic tipping points in our country. We've had half dozen of these in the last 75 years, where our country's going to be challenged to step up and get some things fixed. And you know, you see it in our competitive standpoint, you see it in our declining position in the world, you see it in the very real threat of Islamic fundamentalists, you see it in the threat of, you know, our misguided energy policies. The country needs a win. And answering your question in 2 ways. One area that I would particularly like to focus on is transforming our energy policies, which I think right now can be viewed as, you know, let's go borrow money from China so we can buy oil from countries around the world who don't like us. You may be the first nation in modern history that's literally funding both sides of a war. We put our troops in harm's way, and they've done a remarkable job, yet we're sending north of $250 billion abroad to, again, regimes in the Middle East or in Russia or in Venezuela who are not friends of America. So how do we transform that around the security issue? How do we transform that around job creation? I made my living in telecom and IT. I think that's driven our economy in the last 20 years. I would argue that alternative and cleaner energy development will have as much job creation possibility and wealth creation over the next 20 years as information technology had. We've got to step up and be a leader right there. It also gives us a chance to, I believe, step up on the question of climate change and global warming, which not only will help in terms of environmental, but will help restore our stature in the world. Now, how am I going to do that? The value add I can hopefully bring to the United States Senate is that you know, I'm proud to be a Democrat, but I also believe the American public at this point are tired of partisan solutions. I'd love to create a coalition of 10 or 12 bipartisan senators that would be the radical centrists, that would actually be about getting things done, because the issues ranging from energy to competitiveness to our fiscal policies to our standing in the world, a lot of these issues are not going to take incremental change. They're going to take transformative change. And the only way the American public, I believe, is going to buy into that is if they say that it's an American first solution. And in some small way, I believe my record in Virginia demonstrates some track record of being able to have that kind of transformative solutions.
Syndicated talk show host Davey D, Hip Hop Radio. Go for it.
You know, I live in California.
Yes, sir.
And our Richmond, California was put as one of the most dangerous cities in America. But it wasn't that long ago when your Richmond was also in the same scenario. But that being said, you being a senator, how can you put forth some sort of strategy to eliminate some of these pitfalls that are impacting folks in these inner cities, whether it's Richmond, Virginia, or Richmond, California, which is resulting in people going to prison at high rates, or people killing, you know, at high rates, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes, sir. Well, I think in one way, and I want to go back into your colleague's question as well. You know, I think there needs to be a coalition between some of our communities in the inner cities and some of the communities in the rural communities. I mean, what I don't want us to have is an America where we've got these bands of prosperity surrounding an inner city core that's left behind, and then wide swaths of a rural community left behind. So how do we grapple with that? You start with jobs. You start with how do you incent moving jobs? You know, I've talked about the rural communities. How do you also incent jobs back into our inner cities so that people have that sense of hope that there is a future for them?